Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Interviewing Wednesdays. We're very glad you're with us today. It's June 9th, 2021. For those people on Zoom, in fact, let me switch screens here so I get the right thing. So for those people on Zoom, as soon as you think of a question, please just open up your chat box and put your questions into the chat box. And for those people watching right now on Facebook, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please just enter them into the comment field. We are monitoring that feed and we'll be sure to get those questions answered for you. Please note, let's see here. Please note this event is being recorded and is currently live on Facebook, even though I'm having technical issues today. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, and if you happen to post a comment in the chat box or have your microphone or camera on, you give consent for your comment, name, and picture to appear. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. Back in 2008, I started a website called careerdfw.org to help those who were unemployed in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. In 2012, I started a second website, careerusa.org, to help people outside the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I've written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search That You May Not Know. Since 2007, I've been facilitating and leading the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. The group's been around since the late 1990s, and I'll tell you about our upcoming programming this Friday at the end of this session. And since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team, and you'll hear more about that in just a second. Well, back when COVID started and we couldn't meet in person anymore on Wednesdays to conduct interviewing, I asked Mark and Walt, hey, do y'all want to put together some kind of workshop we can do this online on Zoom. I have a Zoom account. Let's help people who are stuck at home right now. And Mark and Walt got together and a couple of weeks later came back and went, okay, we can do it in about 20 hours and it takes 13 lessons. And it was just like, oh my gosh. And we went, okay, let's go. So we're now, and I think this is the fourth round that we're now going through and doing it. I know they've modified their presentation, to update it as they realize what works and what doesn't work. So gentlemen, you want to introduce yourselves?
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Good to see some familiar faces. And my name is Mark McDonald. I've been leading the pit crew since 2014. And about a year before that, I got laid off for the third time from my career, which was telecommunications equipment. So I worked for several companies who made the specialized electronics that phone companies would use to provide service. And it started going downhill in 2002. And 10 years later, I'd been laid off 3 times. But that was the opportunity to get involved in the pit crew. And then I started leading it shortly thereafter. The pit crew does just what it says. We give people an opportunity to practice their interviewing skills. We used to do that face-to-face when we met at the church. And that card is from those days when we would meet, except for we've changed it to meetings via Zoom. But it used to have the address for the church there. And hopefully we'll get back to doing that sometime in the fall. But I encourage you to come and practice. If there's time, I'll talk a little bit more about the pit crew and how to get involved when you're ready to practice. But let me just say that you should practice early and practice often. Every time you practice, you're going to get better. And we want to try to get you to the point in the pit crew where you can focus on other things besides how you're going to answer the questions. You can focus on building rapport. You can focus on asking the questions that you'd like to hear answered. So there's a whole process involved in how an interview works. Today, we're going to talk about openings and closings and follow-up. But there's other pieces and parts that we'll be covering in the rest of the session. You get a chance to practice all those and develop all those by practicing with the pit crew. And one more thing, there's no charge for this. It's all volunteers, and the hiring managers, the people who interview, have all been hiring managers. So we consider ourselves professionals at selecting people, and so we want to share that expertise with you. So if you would, though, please link in with me, and all you have to do is send me a note and said, here's where we met. We met on Interview Wednesdays. I just like to know that you and I have actually interacted, even though we may not have talked, and you're not just spamming me. So if you don't send a message, I will pretty much ignore those LinkedIn requests. And We also now offer one-way video interviews. And if you want to do that, just send your information to, or send your request to dallaspitcrew@gmail.com. This gives you a chance to practice talking to an interview robot. And it's different. It's just completely different than a two-way video interview or a two-way panel interview. It's something you ought to practice if you expect that you're going to have to interact. And the way these tools work, and we're using a tool from Easy Hire that's been donated to Jeff, and he's made it available to the pit crew. So it's a professional level tool that companies buy to do these one-way interviews. And so I can give you a chance to interact with that tool and see what it's like. I give you the questions in advance. Not all interviews are done that way, but in the pit crew case, you get the questions in advance, and then you get a chance to answer those questions in video. You will be the only one who sees that video. Once we get the process started, it just goes automatically. And so I don't see it, and you can save it, but you're the only one who'll ever see it if that's the one you choose. So take advantage of that. And then for Wednesday afternoon, I like to talk about one other thing that I do to help job seekers, and I help people answer the question, why did you leave your last position? So it may not be the most recent position because a lot of people, it was COVID, that pretty much explains it. But if there's previous positions where you may have some difficulty answering that question, it may be a series of short-term engagements. It may be a period of time when you were providing care to an elderly parent or to a child. You have a blank spot in your experience. So I cover all of those situations, and it depends on your situation. So we have a one-on-one conversation, and we work out exactly how you're going to address the questions that are asked about those events in your past. So reach out to me. Again, everything flows through dallaspitcrew@gmail.com to request an interview, to request a one-way interview, or to request coaching on why did you leave your last job, dallaspitcrew@gmail.com. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, Walt.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon session. Gee whiz, Mark, I thought if they asked me when I left my last job, it was because a guy called me up and said today was my last day, and that's the reason I left. But I think there's a better way to do that. So I think you have some wisdom and advice to share. I can also help you with that as well, because I give a interview success workshop. Sorry, information was on my mind. I'm giving the information interview tomorrow. So, but I like to help people learn how to differentiate themselves from other candidates and how to sell themselves, which is when we're selling ourselves, we're selling who we are, what we do, and how we can help. And to do that, starting with the very basics and fundamentals, covering the 11 basic categories of questions, and talking about how we can apply the selling of I am, I do, I help, and that and be different at the same time. So it's a very informal workshop. I do it on Zoom from 10 to 12 on Tuesdays. You have to be registered to attend because it's only a small group. All I really need is a job description, but I like to go ahead and add your resume because it helps me understand what your job description is, and I can look at your responses and say how relevant are they to the job description. You don't need any additional preparation. Come as you are. We want to take you from wherever you are to the next level so that when you go into a real interview, you're excited, you're enthusiastic, or you're very interested, and you have confidence, and you have done your homework and your preparation in advance, so that when you walk into that interview, it's a fun time and it's not a please God help me answer these questions experience. So just send me that email, let me know. I'll be glad to sign you up. I call it learning without squirming.
Great. Thank you very, very much. And there's Walt's LinkedIn profile. And he also would like you to send a personal note if you want to connect with him. All right. Well, today is session number 6, interview openings and closings and interview follow-up. So gentlemen, take it away.
All right. You guys should see the screen now.
We do.
Maybe some nods or wave your hand or something if you can see it. I got to get a little bigger. There we go, Jeff. Give me a thumbs up. Trying to see more of you guys here by adjusting. That doesn't seem to be working though. All right, well, I have the chat screen up and I'm going to ask you to put in some questions here in a second. Right now, so here's the day's topic. It's topic number 6, interview openings and closings and interview follow-up. And here is the, there we go, it's working. Here is the whole list of all 13 sessions. And Walt and I put a lot of thought into what was going to be in each session and what order the sessions came in. But nowadays, since we've done it 4 times, there's recordings of all of these sessions available on the Career USA YouTube channel. So you can look at them at any order you want. And if there's a particular thing you want to focus on, just go right to that session. The most recent, we completed the most recent series at the end of March. So January, February, March, we went through all 13 of these sessions. Today, we are on session number 6. And if you look at the structure of these, if you want to find a particular topic and you don't know where to look, the first 5 are all about preparing for the interview, okay? And interviewing in general and a specific interview. And so most people, when they're new to the job search, they just don't realize how much preparation is necessary to do well. And so we spent 5 sessions going over the various aspects of getting prepared to interview. And today starts the second group of 5, which is all about interviewing. And so we start with openings and closings. We start at the beginning and the end and follow up. And then we'll be talking about discussing compensation and why did you leave your last job, the thing that I coach on, and asking questions and building rapport. So there's a lot of good sessions coming up. But if you want to focus in on one, you can go to the Career USA YouTube channel and you can find those sessions and take a look at them in advance. The final 3 topics are kind of some advanced things that build on the 10 that came before. So it's a good idea. You can go and take a look at those, but they will refer back to the previous sessions pretty extensively. So there you go. That's the 13 topics, about 20 hours worth of material, all about interviewing. Okay, so I'm going to take a little aside here to set this up and introduce today's topic, and then I want to ask you guys to type in some questions that you may have about these topics, because we want to hear your questions first to make sure we cover what you're interested in. And last week we got a lot of good questions, and we got a few questions that were off topic, but we answered them anyway because we had time. So if you got I'll accept general questions as well. And if we have time, we'll get to them. And if we don't, then we'll probably follow up with you afterwards individually to get your questions answered. But this is from my experience with the pit crew, the feedback that we give, okay? And it kind of comes in kind of basically 4 categories. We give a lot of feedback on how to prepare better or how to be better prepared. And as I just talked about, there's 5 sessions in this series just about preparation. But people come to the interview, like I said, when they're new, they don't really understand or realize how much preparation is necessary. So we end up giving feedback on that. We give feedback on getting a good start, and that's what we're going to talk about today. That's an opening, is getting a good start to your interview, and that'll set the stage for what comes to follow. Finishing strong is what we call it in the pit crew, and so that's closings we're going to talk about today, finishing strong. And then the 4th thing is a big group of things we talk about: taking the lead and avoiding a crash. So this is differentiating yourself from other candidates and avoiding a mistake. And so the next 4 sessions will cover these. For instance, how to build rapport and asking questions is a very good way to differentiate yourself from other candidates and take the lead. So in the pit crew, this is the kind of feedback you'll get. And avoiding a crash, is avoiding topics or phrases or ways of saying things that are going to do more harm than good. Now, also today, which usually we don't give feedback in the pit crew, but it's a topic for today because it's related to finishing strong, is your interview follow-up. Okay, so now it's time for you guys to put in your questions that you'd like to make sure we cover in today's session about getting a good start, having a good opening, finishing strong, having a good closing, and how to follow up with after the interview is over. So what kind of questions do you have? Start typing them in, please. We need our Jeopardy music.
There was one question about a headhunter asking to push all communications from him, and should they also carbon copy or go directly to the headhunter? My answer, the short answer is go through the headhunter. What's the headhunter going to say about you to the hiring manager if you go around them? You will not be on their team. They will not be on your team. Headhunters generally like to control everything. So I would just say, follow their process.
All right, here they come, rolling in. Let's see. Going into an interview knowing that you are overqualified. Okay, so we got the overqualified. And we'll talk about that. How to find out affinity points without sounding like you are cyber talking the interviewer. I had 4 interviews in person yesterday and sent all my thank you emails last night. Is there anything else I should do? Okay, great topic. Walter's going to cover that and answer your question. How long should you wait to follow up after a screening interview? Okay, another question I'm sure that's on the mind of everybody. You know, how persistent should you be? I guess that's the question. How do you handle age issues?
Send them to their room if they disobey.
Send them to their room. Put them in timeout. Thanks, Shelley, for your information. Oh, by the way, if you guys want to post up your contact information, go ahead and do that. And I encourage and if you're a first timer or relatively new, please note that also in the chat window. And I encourage, those in the group who have been in the job search a little bit longer to reach out to them and give them the tips, help them to shorten their job search by sharing your experience. And there's my contact information if you want to link in with me and the Pit Crew email address. So, job search is a community effort, especially in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. That's the way we do it. And so reach out and help each other and use this chat window to, find out how to connect to people who you may be able to help. Okay, well, let's get going then. And thanks for those questions. And if you think of any other questions, just put them in the chat window and we'll be referring to it a couple of breaks we take during the interview, during the presentation. Okay, so getting a good start and finishing strong. This is a quick review, and then I'm going to do a deeper dive into these topics. So here we go. I break down getting a good start into 3 parts. The greeting, and in my recommendation, the greeting should be a statement of enthusiasm, and I'll break that down in a little bit more. You will often get, about 2/3 of the time, you'll often get an invitation to make an opening statement. So the interviewer may say something, tell me about yourself, tell me about your background that's relevant to this position, let's review your resume, or what brings us together today. Almost anything they say, you're going to answer with your opening statement, which is not very long. It's only a couple of minutes long. So even if they say, let's review your resume, you want to answer with your opening statement, and then you can say, well, where would you like to start on my resume? And then your first question. So there's 3 parts to getting a good start. The rule of 3, the statement of enthusiasm, which is part of your greeting, your opening statement, the answer to the question, tell me about yourself, what brings us together today, and then the first question you ask, and the last one's probably the most important, is to start asking questions early in the process. And I'm suggesting it's just part of the first 3 or 4 minutes. You, in that 3 or 4 minute introduction, with a question or two or three. Now, finishing strong similarly has 3 parts. You need to ask questions about the role and the hiring process. So this is just a summary real quick. You need to ask for feedback to discover objections. So don't forget to ask for feedback at the end of your interview and ask for the job or ask to advance to the next step. So many people do not do this. They don't close it out strong. And so we're going to talk about that today. So let's go into breaking this down. I recommend that your greeting be a statement of enthusiasm. Okay, now you're going to, say, hello, my name is Mark. Isn't the weather nice today? And thank you for your time. But I would say, and you can say that stuff to niceties to show that you're human, but you need to also say, I'm really excited to have this conversation today because, and you're going to say a couple of things about the job, okay? You're going to say 2 things you believe you can help them with, and those are based on your preparation at this point, right? The job description and any conversations you may have had with the recruiter. But 2 things, very specific things you believe that you can help them with, which is why you're excited, interested, enthused to have a conversation with them today. So here's an example. I really enjoy helping companies recover cash using inventory control and flexible logistics. Okay, so that's a couple of specific things, inventory control and flexible logistics, that you are good at, you enjoy doing, and it's why you're interested in this job. Now, there's 3 parts to the motivation, and I'm going to talk about this a little more in the tell me about yourself, but you want to make sure in this introduction, this first few minutes of the conversation, that you address why you're motivated, and it's motivated for this job, this company, and at this time. So let's keep going. And so include in your greeting, and your greeting could be as short as, I'm happy to have this conversation because, and then mention 2 ways you can help them out. Now, I have a little formula here for tell me about yourself, and Walt's got his version as well. There's quite a few things you could put in here, and Walt will talk about the options. I've kind of over the years come up with the thing that I want people to focus on, and here's the way I suggest you do it. Okay, you start with your professional training. Okay, so you don't, unless you know that you went to the same college, for instance, or you went to, you have you may have lived in the same town. There's no need to start any sooner than your professional training. So that might be college, that might be military service, it might be, on-the-job training. I started my first job, right out of high school as a bookkeeper, and advanced to accounting. So just talk about the beginning, how you got started in your career and your professional training associated with that. And then you might include one personal tidbit. A little personal tidbit might be, I've lived in Dallas for 30 years, or I just moved to Dallas a month ago or a year ago, or I'd like to play tennis. Just a little personal tidbit, something that might be interesting about you or puts your job search in context. If you've lived in Dallas area for all of your professional life, then this is probably likely where you're going to stay. You might not be that open to relocation, but include something, a little personal tidbit about you in the first few seconds. Okay, so you're setting up a story. I have this training, I have these achievements, and I'm interested in coming to work for you because. Okay, so the second part is you're going to mention 3 achievements related to this position. And this is not what you did, it's just what you achieved. It's the result of your star story or the result of a challenge that you may have faced. So 3 achievements related to the position. You can also include an area of expertise. If you claim some expertise, if you've done something for 10,000 hours, I think is the definition of an expert. then, or one definition of an expert, then you can throw that in if it's clearly something they're going to be interested in. But you also want to say, I have this expertise and I've helped companies, do X, Y, and Z with this expertise. Okay. Now, these also need to be not generic. I mean, you're going to say, I have expertise or I achieved this, that, or the other thing, but that's a specific instance. Okay. So it's not a general thing. So when they say, you said you had this expertise in X, Y, Z, tell me more about that. You're going to have a story to tell, a very specific achievement story. Okay. So one of the mistakes that people make is they become very professorial, bookish. They say, they talk like, they read it out of a book, and it's not personalized to them. It's not specific to something that they've actually done. And that's very hard to remember and not very impressive. Anybody can read a book. So you want to tell a specific instance so it's much more believable. And then the third part, okay, so that's a minute for your professional training and 3 achievements or areas of expertise where you can be of help. The last minute of the 2 minutes you have for this introductory statement is your motivation. And so you want to finish up the motivation by talking about how this position fits into your career arc and why you were interested in this company and why now. Okay. And the why now needs to be more than, I'm out of work, so I need a job. The why now is, I was trained, I've had these roles and I've achieved these things that helped my company. And now I'm ready to move on to the next step in my career. And that's why I'm interested in this company and this job at this time. It's time in the arc of my career to be taking this next step. So it could be a increase in responsibility. It could be some breadth. It could be moving on to another industry. But talk about your motivation right up front. So that answers that question for the interviewer before they even have to ask. Now, you've taken maybe 3 minutes, depending on how much the interviewer interacts with you, 3 or 4 minutes, and you've introduced yourself, you've talked about why you're motivated, you've talked about some of the achievements that you have very briefly, and then you want to start asking questions now. And last week we talked about analyzing the job description, and if you were there, or if you've seen the presentation before, there's a lot of reasons to doubt that a job description is completely accurate and includes everything that's important to the current hiring manager at the current time. So oftentimes they're old, oftentimes they've just been built over the years, more and more stuff has been added to them, so there may be some obsolete things on there. So you really need to take the advantage early in the process, and as part of getting a good start asking questions to clarify that the job description is a good reference, and if it's not, what is the right information? So you might ask questions like, here we go. So you're going to ask questions. You need to be persistent. You may want to ask more than one question. As a matter of fact, I would ask at least 2 questions. And this may be a little bit awkward because early in the in this interview, it's only 3 or 4 minutes in, you're starting to, kind of take over the interview by asking your own questions. So you may want to soften them a little bit and say, I'm curious to know, or, I did some research and it was really interesting that. So kind of bring that up in a more formal and softer way, but you definitely want to get these questions asked and answered. What are the characteristics of top performers in this role? It's a good one to ask. From your perspective, what are the most important objectives or requirements for this position? In your opinion, what is the most important contribution that the company expects from this role? So you're asking defining questions. These are all questions. How will I be able to help you? How will I be able to help you? This is what you want to know. And you may find out that the things that are on the job description are fairly accurate, and you may find out that there's additional things that the hiring manager is interested in. And you don't just have to ask these questions of the hiring manager. You can ask any interviewer and you can personalize it. You know, from your perspective, I know you're not going to make the final decision, right? I know you're not going to make the final decision, but from your perspective, what is the most important contribution that the company expects from this role? So it doesn't have to be the hiring manager who asks these questions. As a matter of fact, you should try to get the perspective from everyone you interview with about what they think are the most important characteristics of top performers in this role and what they hope to achieve with this role, what specific skills that you could bring to the table that it would make their life easier, what in your background would be most impactful. So you're not going to ask all of these questions, but you want to pick a couple that are suitable to you, that you think, you know, fit with your personality, and get them to talk about what they need. Now, here's one I think is a little dicey, and it's just a matter of phrasing. You know, you can say, what are your most important objectives? Or you could say, what kind of problems do you have? Well, or what kind of obstacles are you facing? I would just avoid in any way, shape, or form asking a negatively oriented question. If somebody asked me that question, I'd say, well, you know, I don't have any major problems. You know, why would I admit that? Okay. So just don't put them in that awkward situation to talk about negative things. Give them a chance to talk about their opportunities and how you can help. Okay, let's move on to finishing strong, because what comes at the end of the interview is a reflection of how you started the interview, and especially those questions you asked. Okay, so if you ask what are the most important characteristics of top performers in this role, and they tell you, then when you finish, you're going to remind them that you have those positive attributes they're looking for. And probably during the process, you've had a chance to tell a story or two about those. And so how you start is connected to how you finish. So, but you want to make sure that you get in the questions. Now, these are prioritized questions. You need to make a list of questions before the interview. You're going to prioritize those. In a later session, we talk about asking questions, and some of those questions you're going to get to ask during the interview. The middle part of the interview, between the opening and the closing, is a big chunk of time where they ask questions and you provide answers, but you also want to ask your own questions. But there's some specific ones at the end that you want to have about the process, and some kind of forward-thinking questions like this one. If I were a spectacular success in this role after 6 months, what would I have accomplished? Okay, that's a good question to ask at the end. You know, at the beginning, you've asked what are the most important priorities. Now you're asking what specifically would I have accomplished, and ask about the hiring process, the next steps, who to contact, things like that. So sometimes you don't have a lot of control over this part of the interview because it may be a 45-minute interview or a 30-minute interview. And, you know, the interviewer decides when they're going to kind of hand it over to you. Do you have any questions for me? So you need to be aware that you may not have a lot of time, so that's why they need to be prioritized. On the other hand, if you have some control over the pace of the interview, then you need to realize that you got a lot of questions that you'd like to ask at the end. So see if you can make that happen. You definitely want to ask for feedback as well, okay? And a very straightforward way, you know, is how do you see me fitting in? Okay, how do you see me fitting in? And a lot of people think, I've heard, you know, that you really shouldn't be asking for objections because that's what the interviewer will remember, you know, is that you are concerned about how you might not measure up. But this is the only time you're going to get feedback. I mean, if you're not a good fit, the next step is, you know, we're moving on with more qualified candidates, and you're never going to hear why they didn't pick you or where you came up short. It's also a very positive character trait to ask for feedback. So how do you see me fitting into this role? Are there any areas in which you feel that I fall short of your requirements? I'm going to post up a document towards the end here of 200 questions you may want to ask. And there's several in that list of asking for feedback and closing the deal. And so there's several in there ways you can ask questions to solicit feedback from them. another common way to do it is to offer up that you may not have explained everything as adequately as you could have. And so, is there anything that I may have not explained to your satisfaction, to see if they may have misunderstood an answer or still have some doubt about a question that you ask. So ask for feedback, and then ask for the job or ask to advance to the next step. And again, this 200 question document that I'll post up has several examples of how to ask for the job. And so you want to tie this request to advance to the next step to your statement of enthusiasm and your opening statement. And so you talked about ways you could help. You're going to summarize the ways you can help, the ones that you brought in with you and the ones that you've learned about during the interview. That's summarizing your value, and then express your desire to join their organization, to begin to help them, and or to continue in the hiring process. Now, all I want to say about post-interview activities, the follow-up, and Walt's going to cover this in a lot of great detail, is that you can continue to influence the outcome of an interview by what you do after the interview is over. So never forget that. You still have an opportunity after the interview is over to influence the outcome. Walt will talk about how to do that well. Okay, do we have some questions we want to answer? Did anything? Okay, do the 3 achievements need to be different than what you've already included on your resume? No, they don't. They can be on your resume. And nope. But you should, if 3 achievements is just the introduction, right? 3 achievements are the ones you think they're going to be most interested in. You should have, quite a few other achievements that may be important to them based on what's in the job description. And then, of course, you're going to be asking the questions right after that opening statement, so that the interview may go a different direction. I think it's a good idea. We talked about star stories, to have your star stories and have your cheat sheet that's written down by achievement. So you just write on your cheat sheet, you put the achievement. And so that cues you to pull up that star story. But the rest of the star story you've practiced and prepared for, so the whole thing doesn't have to be written down there, just your achievements. And then you can categorize those achievements: efficiency achievements, achievements working in a group, achievements with your individual contributions, so on and so forth. Are there any other questions? Okay, yeah, the interview, towards the end here, so you guys don't get distracted, I'm going to post up that document on the chat window. So it's 200 interview questions. It's a good document, and stand by for that. Okay, Walt, I think you're up.
All right, well, let's continue on. And it's very interesting because when Mark and I got together, we decided topics in collaboration and order, modified a little bit for the 2nd generation and maybe a little bit more for the 3rd, and now we're into the 4th. But we didn't collaborate much on the content. And so in an effort to confuse you, we're going to give you 2 opinions. No, that's not true. What we're going to do is give you a couple of alternatives or a couple options of things. And so just about everything Mark has already told you, I'm going to say it again almost, but it's a little bit different way, a little bit different order. But everything he says completely applies to the same thing that I would say, and maybe just a little bit differently. So we'll go back to this basic question in an interview: is what are we selling? And you heard me talk about the interview success workshop, but we want to know what they're buying. All right. So are we selling what they're buying? That's the whole match. We got to figure out what they're buying so that we can sell that to them. That's what salespeople do. They find out the needs, the issues, the concerns, the problems, whatever it is, before they start offering solutions. And candidates don't often do that. I would liken it to the car dealer. When you walk in, they would say, would you like to buy this truck, without asking one question. And we just start selling some things without finding out. That's not what salespeople do. And everyone agrees that we're in a selling mode. The interview is a selling situation. So what are they buying? And so, of course, my model is the I am, I do, I help. They buy who we are, our characteristics, soft skills, personality, culture fit, what we do, the kind of activities we do, the kind of hard skills that we have. And then the I help, because they don't hire us just to do things. They hire us to not only do them, but to have results that achieve the objectives of what they're trying to achieve. So with that in mind, everything that I'm suggesting is going to include some I am, I do, I help in it. The main thing that I see lacking in most candidates' interviews is the I help side. I get a lot of I do, I get some I am, and I get very little of I help, which is the main differentiator. So just including that. So let me ask you this, which is the most important? You can put it in your chat window and hit your space bar if you've enabled your space bar to unmute yourself. Which one do you think is most important of the three? I don't see any responses from anyone.
They're mostly I helps.
Okay.
Can you not see them? Well,
Now I see them.
here's an I do.
I help, I help, I help, I help, I help, I help, I do, I help, I help. It depends on the role. Okay, now I see plenty of them. All right, thank you for your contribution. I'll give you another opinion. I like your idea of I help. And all three are basically extremely important. However, would you agree that if you're not likable, if your soft skills and personality don't match, if it's not a culture fit, it does not matter about what you do and how you can help. If they're not seeing you as a person they would like to work with, if they don't see you as a person that has the kind of personality and the soft skills that are necessary to accomplish what they're wanting you to do. I mean, I had a person, I said, I inherited this person. And I said, he is fantastic in the I do side and the I help side in his job. But please don't let him talk to anyone, no one, not another colleague, not another employee, certainly not a customer. I mean, I just wouldn't want him to do that. But he did a very good job of all the other things. And so the I am side of him was a little bit strange. He was very different, thought a lot of different ways. So anyway, I say if the culture doesn't fit, why interview? And one of the things I'm suggesting when you're doing your networking and you're searching and targeting companies is find out about the culture, because if the culture doesn't match you, why go interview? So that would be my answer on which is the most important, but they all are certainly critical. I'm glad a lot of you said I help in there. So if you heard about Moravia and his communication theory on communications of feeling and attitudes, he came up with a study that said 7% of the message is in the words that are spoken, 38% the way they're said, and 55% is really everything else. And today, everything else is going to be your facial expression, because they can't see much of anything else on an online session. And so as an example, I thought you drove to Dallas. I thought you drove to Dallas. I thought you drove to Dallas. I thought you drove to Dallas, and I thought you drove to Dallas. Okay. In an email, those are all the same 7 words. But in the intonation, there's 6 different meanings coming up with just how you say the question. So we want to take advantage of that, because how we speak is very important, not just only what we say, but how we say it. So our facial expression and body language, what we say are the words we choose, and how we say it, of course, is the intonation that we give. Well, my philosophy is this: what are you thinking prior to the interview? So you want to get in, you want to do your greeting, you want to do your opening, okay? You want to do all those things, but what is your mindset? What are you thinking? And this has a great deal to do with success in an interview. So the things that I'm suggesting must be genuine, all right? I never want you to lie or to be somebody that you're not. I want you to be yourself. But what are you thinking when you walk in? And there's 2 ends of the spectrum. Please, God, help me answer these questions, all right? And so I'm just trying to get through the interview and do the best I can. I'm very nervous. I have a lot of anxiety and fear. And guess what? It's going to sound like and what it's going to look like when we talk. Well, it's very natural. But if we prepare and we practice, we come to the workshop, we go to the pit crew, How many times do you think you need to practice before you gain some confidence, right? It's more than once, right? So it takes a few times, and we find many people repeating their interview practices. I think, Mark, maybe the maximum, I think one was 9 or something like that. I can't, your visual is covered up by the chat window. So anyway, this many, right? Whatever it was.
Yeah, it's 9. Yeah.
Okay. So they practiced a lot. And I remember Jared came back, said I landed, and the interview was so easy, so much easier than the ones that I had here at the workshop and at the pit crew. Well, you go, duh, why do you think that is? And so you were learning during those sessions. Now you're applying into the real interview. So learning is your primary word for practicing, getting better. So the word we choose, the tone we use, and how we look sends a complete message. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is the greeting? Now, Mark talked about a greeting, gave you some details about that. So, but how important is that? So you can drop it in your chat window on a scale of 1 to 10, what you think the importance of that initial greeting would be. That first chance or only chance you get to make a first impression. 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 9, 10, 9, 10, 7, 7, 9, 8, 9. Okay, I'm getting high marks. Lowest number is 7, highest is 10. So we say it's very important. So what kind of greeting do I usually hear? I'm glad to be here. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me today. And that's it. All right. That's not different. It's not showing any enthusiasm, any excitement, or any interest. Now, for those of you that don't like to jump on the table and dance with enthusiasm, the word is interest. You have strong interest in the job in the company. So we want to show that and demonstrate that, but it comes from what we're thinking. What we're thinking drives the other things. It drives our words and how we say it. So you can't just say the words, I'm excited to be here. If you're not smiling and you're not grinning and you're not really looking like you're excited to be there, then it's not going to work, right? So how you look and act can matter as much as your ideas, so you don't get a second chance to make that first impression. The amazing thing is we are judging people, and we judge very quickly about a person. And I'd say it basically comes down to 3 choices: plus, minus, neutral. All right. But we will look at a person and our minds, and we're built as judging individuals. We're almost like the zeros and ones in a computer. Get on, off, yes, no. And we can do that very, very quickly. It's not really fair, but that's what really happens. So let me ask you this. I'd like you to put up a poll, if you would. I don't know if Jeff is available. I don't see him at the thing, but you can put it in the chat window. How long does it take for us to determine trustworthiness? I'm just picking one thing, trustworthiness, upon meeting somebody for the first time. So you got your A, B, C, D, E choices. I'm seeing B, 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 1 to 5 seconds, 6 to 10. Okay, well, there it comes, the poll. So if you could answer the poll right quick.
Sorry, nobody told me about a poll coming up.
That's our fault, Jeff.
That's okay.
Actually, it's Mark's. It's not. I didn't do anything wrong, Mark.
I accept responsibility.
I mean, I have all the ones built from last time. So, you know, even if you didn't tell me, I just have to go find the one from last time.
Yeah, we should notify you in advance. So that we'll take the accountability and responsibility for that, because 1 or 2 of my soft skills are accountable and responsible. So,
Dependable for
if
me.
you're married, you always take the responsibility. All right, so I'm getting 18% for less than a second, 24, 29, 29 for 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15. It's almost spread equally between anywhere from 1 second to about 15 seconds. Okay. Well, thank you for those responses. So what did we find out? So Princeton University did a search. about making decisions and judgments about trustworthiness, competence, likability within a fraction of a second after seeing someone's face. Trustworthiness was within a 1/10 of a second. So for those of you that answered less than a second for trustworthiness, you were the ones that agreed with the research from Princeton. Very, very fast. And so these are not cognitive processes. We just see them and make them. We don't stop and think about it. We don't look at a person and say, well, I don't think that person looks very trustworthy. We don't do that. It just bang, it's just there. So we form just about everything else for the following 3 seconds. So everybody who said everything is under 3 seconds would be right from the Princeton study. In about 3 seconds, we're going to make those decisions. I'm going to see you before I hear you. All right. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see you. So in the chat window, what is the best thing we can possibly do the first thing they see us? What should we be doing?
Smiling.
Oh, I forgot to smile today. I got to start doing that. Right, smiling. But it comes from within, all right? Because if we're really genuinely excited to be here and we're interested in having a conversation and talking with this person, we will be smiling, all right? So a lot of people smile at the greeting, but in most of the candidates I see, turn it off after that, all right? Well, it's okay in the workshop because we're in the learning mode. I'm not expecting you to be well prepared. I'm not expecting you to be well versed, well practiced. I'm expecting you to say, I got to learn how to prepare. I got to learn fundamentals. And I can't learn fundamentals, I understand that, and smile at the same time. So I don't really expect all that. But when you get into the mock interviews, when you go to Mark McDonald's pit crew and start interviewing, now we should be smiling. We should be energetic, have some kind of interest. So the greeting. There's a few things I suggest about the greeting. Know your audience, dress appropriately. We talked about smiling, the eye contact. So eye contact today is looking into the camera. I still have to work after how long have we been doing this? Over a year now, right?
Yeah.
And I'm still having to remind myself to look in the camera and imagine that I'm talking to a person, not a machine. And it's not that easy to do. Even today, my eyes will want to wander and look at the person or something like that. But getting used to that. So that definitely has to be practiced. And if we're in place, I don't know. I think bowing is going to be the universal greeting anymore because we're not going to touch anybody. We're not going to do elbows and we're not going to do handshakes or whatever. But anyway, if you're meeting, we want to have a medium firm handshake. And basically, the instant you shake hands with somebody, you have a split second to shake hands just like they do. So if there are those that are the gorilla grippers, where you have to grip hard to survive, we generally can feel those right up front. And I know some people, you just look at their personality and talk to them a little bit, and you can almost tell that they're grippers. They're going to be strong. So take your rings off, do all that kind of stuff for your shake hands with them because you'll have bruises on your fingers. Use genuine energy, enthusiasm, and interest. Energy and enthusiasm for the outgoing people. For those who can't show or don't show normally a lot of interest and excitement, that sort of, enthusiasm and excitement, then interest, because we all should be interested in the job in the company. And if you can exchange business cards, always get contacts information, then prepare and practice, right? So we want to get to this point, and our whole purpose for Mark and I is to have you feel comfortable and confident in an interview. That's why we exist. So the opening statement with genuine interest and or enthusiasm or interest. And so here's my idea about an opening statement. This is not the greeting now, this is the opening statement. The greeting, I would go back to what Mark said, what you include in there. I have something like, it's great to be here. I'm excited to talk with you and have a conversation with you about this particular position. I look forward to getting the information of the expectations, and I think I can help you. Now I'm going to mention a couple of things, just like Mark said. I think I can help you improve your footprint, get more hits on your webpage, whatever it might be. If you're in marketing, those types of things that they will want you to do. based on the information that you've had so far. But when you get into tell me about yourself or what brings you here or whatever it might be for that opening statement, here's what I suggest. And this is very, very similar, maybe a little bit out of order, different order than what Mark said, but very, very similar. But we all decided to get into our career at one point in time. Okay, I was in IT for about 40 years. So how did I do that? What happened? Why did I get into IT? So I just say a little thing like when I was in college, I had a summer job. They put a computer across the hall. I actually left my job on that computer that summer. I've been in information technology ever since. And I love focusing on customer service. Okay. The role I'm looking for is a customer relationship manager, a customer success manager in the IT serving, clients. So that says, one, how I say it tells them I love to do that kind of work. I enjoy doing that. Here's the decision. Here's how I got into it. I like doing that. And I like achieving from what I do. I like achieving the results of that. So that's a little bit of I do and I help. And saying I'm excited to be here is a little bit about I am. So here you can give a couple of relevant experience items and a couple of relevant strengths and the value. Remember, Mark is saying, put in an achievement, put in a result. Well, I can in one sentence cover both of these. Say with my experience in developing software, testing software, implementing software, and with my collaboration, my leadership, I'm gonna mention 2 or 3 of my soft skills. I can help you do what? I can help you achieve these things. For example, and then I give 1 or 2 specifics. Same thing really that Mark was saying. Why don't we go ahead and tell them why we left our last position? Unless it was a very negative situation, right? If it was a normal situation, you can say, I left because I was downsized. You don't have to go into any other information than that. So we don't want to stop there though, because I want to say what it is. And I want to say it very briefly. I don't want to explain why I was downsized or anything like that. Just say, I had a merger and acquisition, and of the so many whatever it is people that were let go, I was one of them. But that brings me to why I'm here with you today. Mark covered these 2 items exactly the same that I'm covering here. Why do I want this job? What is it about this job that excites me and energizes me? And why do I want to work here? Those are 2 questions we have to be able to answer. Well, why don't we just go ahead and kind of mention it in our opening statement? Not our greeting, but in our opening statement. So I can tell them, what is it about this job and include a value. So why do I like this job? If I talk to them and says, I really enjoy turning customers around. I enjoy having referenceable clients. I've always met my sales quotas for services, and I'm talking basically in their frame of reference in the I help side. I'm driven by what my results are more than what I do. I love what I'm doing, but I'm driven more by the results. That's very different than saying, I like teamwork, I like this, I like that. All right. You can be specific and put in the I help side. Then state your job focus. Now, this is where we're beginning to get into the question mode. And so specifically, so I'm in transition, I'm really interested in whatever their target position is here at company name. All right. Got to show that smile and that enthusiasm and interest. Are you truly excited about it? Because if you're not, you won't show it. Then you can ask one of those first questions that Mark was talking about too. And so I have 2, and they're both on the I am and the I help side. Who are you looking for? What are the characteristics of a top performer? How does you would describe a person to what they would need to be successful in this role? You saw several examples from Mark. And what can I do in the first 6 to 9 months for you to say I've done an outstanding job? Can you tell me when my performance review comes up, what are the criteria in my performance review? I mean, at one point in time, you might want to ask for a copy if they have a formal program and they have all the things in a document that says, here's how we're going to measure you. I might want to get a copy of that. I actually did that in the last interview I had. And I read all the stuff and I called up my interviewer and said, does anybody actually do all of that? and basically I got an answer and said, well, no, not quite. We prioritize, we do all this kind of stuff. Anyway, so when you got the 6 to 9 months, you're kind of looking for something a little bit long-term. We want to copy down on a piece of paper, make a list of their answers. What are they talking about in our characteristics? What are they talking about in this? So that we can now go back and say, well, which one of these would you like to talk about first? I can give an example perhaps of one. So would you like to hear about a time when now that we're into a conversation and we're into discussing the needs that they have. A follow-up question to 6 to 9 months and say, okay, which one of these of the things you told me are the most important? All right, that's just like asking the 30, 60, 90. What do I need to pay attention to first? So a follow-on question. So you can go into and start talking about those things. But you always want to stay on their agenda. Now I want to get into closing. Probably the weakest part of candidate interviews that I see is just not closing at all, not closing the sale. It sounds like same thing as if the car salesman would say, well, it's been great talking to you. I've shown you a lot of different cars and automobiles, and I look forward to hearing from you soon, and walk away. Well, I'm like, that's just how bad it is. Well, we do the same thing. Candidates do that all the time. They just fail to close. The most popular close is, thank you for taking the time to talk today. I look forward to hearing from you soon. That's my opinion of that close. Okay, that's about as bad as you could possibly get. Now, it's not really a bad thing to say, but we have to say more than that. Okay, now I don't want to do this. I look forward to hearing from you soon. I want to find out when to say. Some people say, how long do I need to wait before I contact them? Well, why don't we ask? We'll find out, and that's part of the close. So here's my outline for the close, and it's similar, very similar to what Mark said. But let's say, okay, it's been great talking with you today. I really am excited and interested in this job. Now, one person in a candidate interview said, this job and this company is the reason I don't need an alarm clock. All right. So he is stating in that sentence that he is energized by this. I mean, he doesn't have trouble getting up and going to work every day or starting work. A very, very strong statement. Now, we've talked today about you need a person who can help you, and then we're going to list some achievements and things that we've discussed, and we're going to summarize our value to the job and to the company. Let's refresh them. Let's get them in their minds the value that we bring. The value that we bring is going to really help the hiring decision, and it's going to affect our salary. Because they may look at us and they have one job description, and we come in and we show them that we can do a lot more than that and add a lot more value to it, then we can negotiate a higher salary. They may go back and change the job description, et cetera. We really would like to do that trial close, and Mark covered that. Similar with me. Do you see me fitting into this role? Is a nice question. That's a good question to ask, like a panel interview. Sometimes we call it asking for the job. But we can't ask everybody for the job except for the person that makes the hiring decision. By the way, that might be in HR, not the hiring manager. So we want to find out really how we stand. You may have a concern about that, but if you ask the question in a negative sense, do you have any concerns? And that seems negative. Here's the risk. If they have any concerns, you're not going to get hired. So there's no risk in asking the question. There really isn't. They may not tell you, they may not give them to you, but it's not going to hurt. But you are sending the message with them. Is there anything that I haven't covered? Is there anything that we need to cover more that causes you for concern about this role? And perhaps get a chance to resolve that concern. Okay, that's the purpose of that. And I like asking, he says, do you see me what as fitting as the top candidate? Right? Don't ask, how do I compare to other candidates? They will blow me off if I ask that question, because they haven't interviewed everybody. They got to get together and make decisions, and it doesn't tell you anything. You might be better than all the other candidates, but they still got 5 more to interview, and that doesn't tell you where you are in relationship to that position. So finding out that if they give you an answer doesn't guarantee you that you are going to get the job. But If you ask that and they say, oh yeah, I think it'd be great, and they see a real positive thing and they react that way, then you know they want you. If they take their eyes away from you, look down, break eye contact, there's a concern. There's something that they might not say, but you watch the body language and there's something. And you can follow up. Says, well, it would appear that you have some concerns or something about me. Is there anything else that I can help you with? Be persistent, pursue. You've already lost the job if you don't try to follow up and find out what it is. So be persistent, but don't be real negative with them. So find out the whole process for hiring and update it as you go along so that you know when their projected start date is, their hiring date, all the people that are going to interview you. You might get their names when those interviews are scheduled. What are their roles? We like to be able to do research and find out about that. What are their timeframes? Who is the decision maker, etc. In other words, find out everything about getting on board. And there's no reason a company cannot describe that to you. Then the very thing, next thing is the next step. So where do we go from here? Will I hear back from someone? Who will I hear back from? Okay, Mark. And if I hear from you, when should I hear back? Okay, well, a week from Friday. Okay, Mark, if I don't hear from you for a week from Friday, can I call you on Monday afternoon? All right. So I try to set up a time. I set up an expectation. And then when I get his voicemail on Monday afternoon, we'll talk about follow-up, and I'll include some things in that, but I end up with that. And if I don't hear from you by another date, I'm going to call you again, and you reset the time frame for calling. So that's some of the follow-up stuff. But get contact information as best you can. All right, you would like to know. Sometimes it's not as easy to do. You might have to do a little work to do that, but ask them for their email, ask them for that information. Maybe they won't give it to you, but they're not going to not hire you because you asked. I mean, you may as well ask. You can't, it can't be any worse than not having it already. And then smile again, make that eye contact and show that interest and enthusiasm. A statement. Some people say, can you show me my desk where I'd work if on the way out, something like that. But I can't wait to get started. So let's talk about follow-up now. Let me ask if there's any questions so far on what we've talked about on openings and closings before I get into follow-up.
No new questions.
All right, so let me ask one. Which one is the most important, the opening or the closing? If you had to choose, now, you know, both are very important, but if you had to choose one, which one's the most important?
Closing.
Closing. And why closing?
Because that's their last impression of you.
Okay. And you can also save a lousy opening. Turn my phone off, sorry. Yeah, you might not do a very good opening, but through the interview process and through everything in between the opening and closing, and you talk about things, you may be able to do it on much stronger close than you did in the opening. I would say the quality of the opening is strongly related to preparation, right? I mean, it all is, but what you know about the company and the knowledge about the company, what you know about the people, you know, my greeting, if I was greeting and Mark's interviewing me, and I like to say, hi, Mark, it's really good to see you. So I didn't know that you led the pit crew. I used to do an interview success workshop and help people with interviewing skills too. And I find something in common, and I mentioned it in the greeting, right? Very positive. We make a connection right away with something. Oh, you went to SMU? So did I. Did you graduate? Anyway, so the closing would be the one. Now, I would love you to do a good opening, a good middle, and a good closing. So following up. So what do you do after the interview? We used to be able to mail them. Now it's kind of hard to find mailing addresses, but we would like to do a thank you note. Email is okay today. And one person hand wrote the thank you note on a thank you note card, took a picture of it and included it in his email. So I did a little bit of both. And I'll talk a little bit about the thank you note itself. You may need to alert references. If they ask you for any, you definitely need to alert them. And I'll say that you may be contacted. You might want to review with your references what it is you would like them to say about you that they know about and would agree that's relevant to that job position. Take a look at your, sit down and say, okay, let me just look at this interview I just had and how did it go well? And where did I have issues or problems, or where are some things that I can improve upon? And what answers do I need to prove? What more research do I need to do, et cetera? And how would I do that? Because I come up for the next interview, I want to make sure that I'm not doing those same errors or mistakes, or that I'm making improvements. And then research everything that you need to research. Saying, okay, I better look this up and know about this so that I can improve what I'm doing for the next round. So continue to research, all right? Research the people in the company itself, the industry, the competition. All that kind of information is going to help you. It'll also help you when you ask questions. Well, I understand that Tesla's come out with a new electric vehicle, and now GM is introducing the Lyriq. And so I'm looking at GM and says, so how is the Lyriq going to beat the Tesla electric vehicle? And by the way, that's what you do. You help produce electric vehicles, so you can help them do that. Connection request on LinkedIn. I have a pet peeve about him. Mark mentioned he enjoys people who put a note in their message. This is how I met you. This is how I know you. This is somebody referred me to you. I attended the Wednesday afternoon interviewing sessions, whatever it might be, and I'd like to connect with you. Now, in order not to feel used, you follow up with a connection saying, well, thank you for the connection. Now, if I am a person who might be able to help you make a connection, this is an opportunity to say, I'd like to talk with you more. Could we set up a time in the schedule to have a phone call or something? And in that phone call, I would ask about you. I would ask things about you. I would ask, what is it that's going on with you? And maybe there's some ways, and how can I help you? So I would look for helping them first, not me first. So that's one of the laws of networking, helping them first. So you might want to follow the company. You might want to look up people in the company. You could certainly look up possibilities for informational interviewing with people that work inside the company. So stay in touch. Think about the hiring manager. They are forever busy with other things. I contend that hiring is at the bottom of the to-do list. It's the bottom of the priorities. I'm really busy doing all these activities because I haven't hired you to do them for me. So, but that's kind of the way things are. And the hiring process seems to be very slow most of the time. Every now and then you hear a great story of where it went very, very quickly, but not usually. So stay in touch. Who do I call if I have additional questions as part of finding out in the interview what you might want to do? Who do I contact? Who would that person be? And you should always think of some questions and say, gee, I was talking with you, we had this and we discussed this. And so I like to ask, you ask a question, maybe it's through email or call or whatever, however they choose to be connected or contacted. Anything that you might see that might be relevant to them, some industry news or something like that, you just might forward. So I thought you might be interested in the following article about this, okay? And so I found an interesting article on critical race theory. And so I said, gee, this is a good article that really defines what it's all about. And I thought that was pretty good because I keep hearing those terms, but I don't fully understand what it was about. And I might have talked to somebody else, maybe they're interested. Now, that is not what I do on a job at all. We'll not get into the politics or those kinds of things, but it'd be something that would be beneficial to them. I might send some information to Mark, say, Mark, I saw these are the companies that are hiring today. Here's what the research has been, and he might want to know that kind of information, that kind of thing. Congratulate them on recent accomplishments, thanking them for their replies. We don't thank people sufficiently in my book. I spent a lot of time. This person said, here's 6 companies I'm looking at. I went through LinkedIn, found first, second connections, wrote up a table, put all the information down about when they connected with me, what I knew about them, had they taken the workshop before, all that, put it in a table, I sent it to them, and I got an email back, said, thanks. And that was the last thing I ever heard. I didn't hear if they contacted anybody. I didn't hear any results. I didn't hear anything about it. And it kind of makes me not want to help so hard the next time, right? Because I feel like, you're just trying to focus on your path, your stuff, and you really don't care about, have interest in letting me know what happened. So that's not the kind of message we want to send. So good, thank you. And continue networking, of course. Your follow-up communication. Here is what do you put in a thank you note, and what do you say when you do connect with them? We want to reinforce our enthusiasm or interest in the position and the company. I always suggest we not only say we're really excited about this position, but we're also excited about the company. And in that opening statement, here's why. Here's what it is about the company. I ask people in the workshop, say, what do you know about our company? And I generally get some things that are on the first page of their website. And that's about it. So, okay, well, we know we need to go research the company and find out more things. Include at least one way you can help. So we had talked about this in the interview, and so I look forward. I have some ideas where I think I can help us, whatever it is that you can help do. And then what's the next action step and date? All right, you're doing a follow-up, sending a thank yous. And as we agreed, if I don't hear from you by this date, I'll call you this date. That might be the one that you say. And I would hope that that's what you say, that you've covered that in the interview close. And then make it easy, provide your contact information. So if you don't have a signature line on your email that gives your name, your phone number, your email address, and your LinkedIn URL, I think you're missing out. If I wanted somebody to contact me, I have that information right there. If they send me, if I send them an email, they have the information to find me. And if I don't have that, and I'm going to make them work to contact me, there's a good chance they won't do that. So here's an example of a thank you note. I don't know if you can read that. I don't know if I can make it bigger or move it. Not really. But take a second and kind of read that. This person chose to put it in script rather than block print. So that's an alternative, make it a little more personal. All right, so there's an example. And here's what the essence of the elements in the thank you note. A handwritten one is better than typewritten, unless your handwriting is terrible. And so if your handwriting is really terrible, then I'd rather see an email, have it typed in. But handwritten sends a little bit more personal note. It contains a compliment. What interviewers get a compliment? Very, very few. So it's something that you liked about what they said that interested you, a compliment. It's sent very rapidly. My general rule is within 24 hours, all right? Quickly. And send it to everybody to whom you talked. There was one person that was waiting on an interview, and a security guard came over several times because the interview was delayed and asked if he could help or if they wanted anything and do anything. And he said, I should have gotten that person's name and I should have sent him a thank you note. The admin, when I was waiting to go in and talk to the person, the admin that I'm sitting there, I said hello and talked a little bit, said, what do you like about the company? Not trying to interrupt their job or anything. Did a little bit of an informational interview. And then I sent a thank you note to the admin. I mean, what admins get thank you notes? But how many admins get to vote on whether to hire you or not? They are a critical part of the hiring process. So here's your decision tree on practicing. Be glad to have you sign up for the interview success workshop. send a note to the pit crew, to the pit, or DallasPitCrew@gmail.com to Mark with your resume and job description attached, and he will get you scheduled. We will be glad to help you.
All right, I just posted up the 200 question document. And for those of you, you can just click on it. I think it downloads automatically to your computer.
Lisa asked a good question. Is it okay to have your questions written down in front of you during the interview? And I will tell you this, if we're conducting an interview and I've done the ones that I do them in person at the pit crew, if you don't have your questions written down in front of you, I will deduct points because quite frankly, I want to see that you're prepared. So there is nothing wrong with that. And especially if you can ask a couple of those questions during the interview and and I see you sort of like check something off during the interview, like, oh, I got that question in. I mean, you get big brownie points that way with me.
And you should, in a video interview, you should verbalize it. You say, I just want to let you know, I have a copy of my resume, I have a copy of the job description, and I have a list of questions that I prepared in advance. So I may be referring to those from time to time. Let them know.
Yeah, I would agree. Now, sometimes I think it'd be good to show them the list, except if you've got a virtual background, it doesn't work. But yeah, and they should be prioritized. And you know what your top 2 questions should be by now, right?
All right, let me, I don't know if there's some new ones. So we had several questions at the beginning, overqualified and the age issue and affinity, how to find out affinity points. So being overqualified is a huge question, but let me give you the brief answer and then Walt can add a few things to it. So it's really important that, usually it's not that you're overqualified. It's some other concern they may have that you're going to be a short timer, that you're going to be a know-it-all, you might be difficult to work with, that you're only going to be around for a couple of years and then you're going to retire. So there may be some other issue that raises the risk that you're going to be a good choice. So it's important to verbalize your motivation, right? So if you have a strong motivation and even a personal connection to the work that the company does, that goes a long ways towards alleviating the concern that you may not hang around. And also you want to, when you ask your questions, right after the opening statement, you're going to find out what they need. They're going to tell you where they need help. And so if this question comes up, your go-to is that I can do what you need done. I can help you in the areas you need help. So those are 2 pieces of the story. There's more to it. Walt, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would say the motive is definitely more important than the question. And the motive is generally what Mark said, the short timer. I mean, why wouldn't they want to hire somebody with all the qualifications that you have? Because you can easily do this job, right? So they do definitely have a different concern, and most of the time it is short timer. So my suggested response is to agree with them by saying, well, if you say I'm overqualified, you would agree I'm qualified. I'll tell you what I hear most of the time is, no, I don't think I'm overqualified. And so we disagree with them. Well, that's not going to help us very much with an interviewer to say they're wrong, all right? So we agree with them. And then the same thing I put in the tell me about yourself response, your opening statement, which says, I'm going to give you a couple of reasons why this is the job for me that gives me the reason I don't need an alarm clock and the kind of results that I can achieve for you. And this is the reason I want to work here with this company. I might need to restate that here. And basically it says, convince me this is the job you want to do, even though you've done all these things in the past. But this is the job you want to focus on and do, and this is where you want to do it. Then you can close with, I would never take a position where I'm not fully committed. That is a direct statement towards the motive. In other words, I'm here for the long haul. I'm not here. I'm not looking to leave soon. This is where I want to be.
I was on a phone call Monday and somebody was interviewing with this company and he said, well, I've had 6 different interviews and everybody I've met is in their 20s and 30s. And he eventually got a no thank you letter, and he called back to get some feedback. And apparently somebody had put in the notes, and the HR person actually said, too old. And it's like, my question was, if you've only been interviewing with people who are in their 20s and 30s, is that really a job that you would want? I mean, do you feel like you would fit into that organization? So, be aware. It's one of those culture questions I think you need to ask and find out, what is the makeup of of the workers here? And if you're not interviewing with people who are, your age or whatever, you may want to reconsider.
So I have some input. In the many job search meetings I've attended, you guys have all heard this story before, but when you're faced with the overqualified issue, tell the story. So you're in for open heart surgery. Do you want a surgeon that's qualified or overqualified?
Who do you want piloting your airplane in case it flies into a flock of birds? Yeah,
All
that
right.
could be a closing statement or something like that.
Is
They talk about age.
Lynn
talk about
Adams?
age.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
Lynn Adams. Lynn had a question about affinity points. You want to expand upon that a little bit, Lynn?
Well, just, if there isn't a college that you went to that they went to or something like that, and you're researching them and you find out that they like a specific, I don't know, hobby or something like that. I'm just trying to figure out what to say that wouldn't sound like, I'm cyber stalking them somehow and getting into their personal, life.
Well, I don't think you can bring it up unless you happen to see something in their background. Because if you see like a trophy in their background, oh, I see you're a runner, I also run. But I remember once I had an interview with a gentleman out of Pittsburgh. It was a pillow company, and I knew who he donated to, where he lived, what his house looked like. He was a big runner, whatever. I knew all these facts about him because it's all out there. But I never brought any of them up because the opportunity never came about. It was actually one of the worst interviews I'd ever seen somebody from HR give, because they just went right through my resume, from the bottom of my resume to the top. Tell me about this. Why'd you leave? Tell me about this. Why'd you leave? And that was it. And so it's like, you can't use that stuff unless you have a trigger for it somehow.
Yeah. Well, then you have an opportunity in your opening statement to add a couple of personal items in there, and so if you figured out that they like to play tennis, or they're a runner, or they, volunteer, in Habitat for Humanity, and you've done that as well, you can just kind of mention it as, and you only one or, two things at most, because it's not about your hobbies. It's about how you can help. But that's your opportunity to see if that triggers something, a response from them.
Yeah, and you want to do it, like you said, Mark, in that opening. You want that affinity connection to happen early. You went to Notre Dame and they went to Notre Dame. You want, because that definitely opens the doors for you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, I wanted to say a little bit more about persistence. And so I think the question comes up, okay, so I've had this interview and they tell me it's going to be 2 weeks. And so I call in 2 weeks and I leave a message, and then what happens? Then what should I do? So a couple of different cases. If this is one of your target companies, and we're going to talk about target companies later in the series, but assume you know what a target company is. There's a reason you're interested. You like their mission. You like what they do, or they do a lot of what you're very good at, right? So you get a lot of satisfaction doing that, and so you'd like to work for that company. If they're one of your target companies, the persistence is basically forever. Okay, you've had an opportunity now to meet some people inside one of your target companies, including the recruiters. And so every 60 days or so in the long term, you continue to reach out to them just to query them about your continued interest and how you might be able to help them, and remind them that you're still in the job market. Now, between calling them every week to find out for a specific opportunity and then calling them every couple of months just to keep in touch, there's a lot of ground to cover. And so I just use the rules of 3. So you might start off kind of reaching out to them every 3 or 4 days, okay, for 3 cycles, right? So 4 days, another 4 days, another 4 days, okay? And then you leave a message and you say you're going to call back. You don't say 4 days, you give the date, okay? Now, so after that covers about 2 weeks, right? And then after that, you might go to a week follow-up, okay? And so another 3 cycles, that's another 3 weeks, okay? So now it's been 5 or 6 weeks. Now you switch over to a longer interval, okay? And eventually you kind of work your way into just keeping in touch every 60 days. I mean, I hear a lot of people get ghosted, you know, they never get a call back. And so you got to, you know, be cognizant of how much time you invest. But if it's a company you're interested in, it's a target company you're interested in, then you continue to take the opportunity to keep in touch. Walt, you want to add anything to that?
No, that's fine.
Hey, do we have any other questions, or is that it?
There was one question about somebody that couldn't get the document. Search on
Well,
200 questions.
what you can do is, if you want the document, you can't get hold of it, especially those people on Facebook, you can just send an email to interview@careerdfw.org, interview@careerdfw.org. Tell me what you're looking for, that you want the 200 question document, and I will be glad to send it to you. So,
If you search hyphenated between the words 200 questions candidates may ask, you will probably find the PDF file. It's often on a university. It's out there in several places, but you may be able to just find it by searching on that.
right.
I have a couple of questions if you can hear me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. I'd asked before, so like kind of going back to the overqualified. So in the past, like I was at a director level, but I'm due to life circumstances or whatnot, I'm kind of at a different place in my career. And so I'm now more applying for like senior manager or manager type position. How do you answer that question if they ask, well, you were a director before, why are you, you know, what would make you happy to be, you know, at a senior manager level?
I can start, I guess. Number one is I enjoy being at that level. However, today my focus and what the activities and the accomplishments that I can make in this level are more exciting and more energizing to me. So this is the job that I would like to choose to going forward. Something like that, that says, you don't want to present anything that says, well, I can't find anything at the director level, so I'm taking this role.
Got it. Okay. That's
You
great.
always want to be moving positive, moving forward to something. I mean, look at that job, and is that the one you're going to enjoy getting up and doing every day? Is that the one you're going to enjoy driving if you have to drive to it? It's not how far it is, it's how long it is from where you live. And so put yourself 6 months down the road. And if you're really excited and happy about doing it 6 months down the road, you're in good shape.
Great. Thank you. And my second question is, so if I've applying for a couple of different positions within a company, because like, I mean, I could fit either, you know, either role really well, but I also have a contact that, you know, I can network through to get to the HR recruiter. Which resume do I send to them? Because I've already, you know, job scanned, you know, either or both resumes to put through the application process for either job on their website. So I didn't know like which one I should actually send through.
I would send your bio. If you're going to have somebody hand deliver something, have them if they're not sure who they're delivering it to, if it's going to the same person in HR who's handling both jobs, send them a bio. If it's 2 different people, you know, 2 different recruiters could be posting for 2 different jobs at the company. If that's the case, if the person can figure out internally who it is, then they could send whatever customized resume you sent. But, you know, the object is just to get them to call you on the phone. And if you can get that internal contact to get a resume, a bio saying, hey, here, you need to check this person. Hey, here's this person's bio. My understanding is they've already filled out an online application. They'll go in the system and they'll look.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I would always push, it's better to make the connection before you submit the resume. If you can make that connection internally and find out and say, you know, here's who can I talk to in the company? There's 2 jobs that I'm kind of interested in that I'd like to pursue, but who can I talk to about those jobs and go through it that way? That would be better than just trying to figure out how to submit to 2 different jobs.
Okay.
Plus going that route, you want to find out if there's an internal referral bonus involved, because if there is and you have an internal connection, they can be your champion on the inside because they get rewarded if they help bring you in, and that
Right.
can be helpful as well. Guys, I want to make a general comment. In looking at the chats, I don't see a whole lot of people putting in their 30-second speech information, who they are, what they're looking for, and target companies. So I would encourage everybody to do that every meeting they go to, because especially if you have target companies, a lot of us have lots of connections. And if we see a company where we can help you out, that's going to motivate me anyhow to send you help.
Very good. All right. Well, we're way past 2:30 here. Let me share a screen here. Just want to remind everybody, Career DFW, we're putting on training 5 days a week. Thanks for Walt and Mark for their great presentation today about how to get started in an interview, how to finish an interview, how to follow up. All some really, really great information. Tomorrow for Effective Resume Thursdays, we have a special guest speaker. Locke Alderson will be with us to talk about the resume is not dead, and we'll share some resume tips and tricks. On Friday at the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group at 9:30 in the morning, our speaker is Jeff Crilly, who used to be a news reporter here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and he'll be talking about free publicity. He has started his own PR firm several years ago, and it's become, it's really taken off. He's doing very well there. So he's gonna talk about free publicity. He'll be with us this Friday morning. Next Monday for Networking Mondays at 1 o'clock, Outside the Box Networking, Unconventional Ways to Get Noticed. Our special guest speaker is Jason Hopper. On Tuesday for LinkedIn, our LinkedIn presentation next Tuesday, we talk about LinkedIn every Tuesday. LinkedIn from a recruiter's eye with Kurt Vondermatter, who's an executive recruiter, he's a retained recruiter. So he's actually going to be showing us the back end recruiting package that he uses when he tries to find you and what he's looking for. So this can be a very valuable exercise. You know, if you haven't seen Kurt talk, he's going to show us the back end of LinkedIn and what he prefers, how you can stand out to him when he's trying to find you. So join us this Tuesday at 1 o'clock. Next Wednesday, we'll be on session number 7, discussing compensation and the circumstances around leaving your previous positions. So that'll be our discussion next week. Lessons 1 through 6 are all up on the Career USA YouTube channel. 8 through 13 are from the past series. This session has been recorded. It is going to be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel. On the Career USA YouTube channel, it looks something like this. Please click on playlist where you see that red arrow, and then don't click on the video down below, but click where it says view full playlist, that green arrow. Pick whatever topic you're looking for. That way it'll come up with a list of all the different topics in chronological order. You can go back and watch whatever session is you'd like to see. If you're not receiving emails about our workshops, please join the Career USA mailing list. Please send an email to Career USA, the + subscribes at groups.io. Please note, Career DFW, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We have no full-time, no part-time employees. Walt and Mark are both volunteers. I'm a volunteer. Career DFW survives on donations. Please consider making a donation when you get your next job so we can continue to provide the services that we provide. So thank you for joining us today. Mark and Walt, thank you once again. Hopefully we'll see you all later in the week.
Thanks, Jeff.